Your Excellency, Mr. Adama Barrow, President of the Republic of the Gambia, Excellencies, distinguished members of the Peacebuilding Commission. First and foremost, I would like to say that I am saddened to learn on the passing of our esteemed colleague, His Excellency, Mr. Bernard Tanouk Bouchoué, Permanent Representative of Côte d'Ivoire to the United Nations. On behalf of the Peacebuilding Commission, I express my heartfelt condolences to his family and the permanent mission of Côte d'Ivoire. Now let me warmly welcome His Excellency, Mr. Adama Barrow, President of the Republic of the Gambia, who has kindly agreed to brief this high-level meeting of the Peacebuilding Commission. I would also like to welcome Honorable Ousmane Dabo, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Amadou Sanneh, Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, and Honorable Secretary General of the Cabinet, Habibou Drawé, and the other officials from the Gambia delegation. It is also an honor for me to welcome and thank Your Excellencies, Mr. Neven Mimica, European Commissioner for International Cooperation and Development, Mr. Jean-Claude Brou, President of the Commission of the Economic Community of West African States, Mrs. Fatima Kiari Mohamed, African Union Permanent Observer to the United Nations, Mr. Taye Zerihun, Assistant Secretary General for the Political Affairs and Officer in charge of the Department of Political Affairs, Mr. Abdoulaye Mardiye, Assistant Secretary General, Head of the UNDP Global Policy Bureau, and Mr. Oscar Fernandez Tarango, Assistant Secretary General for the Peacebuilding Support, for agreeing to join this meeting and provide a brief overview of our joint efforts in support of the Gambia. Excellencies, you may recall that in March last year, at the invitation of the government, the PBC chair visited the Gambia and met with Your Excellency, Mr. President, honorable cabinet ministers, and other key national and international stakeholders. Throughout the year 2017, the PBC convened a number of meetings to discuss ways to provide strategic and coherent support to the Gambia's peacebuilding priorities. Our continued engagement has demonstrated the importance and relevance of the PBCs in sustaining international attention and support to the Gambia. The meeting today is a testimony of our commitment to accompany the Gambia through its sustaining peace efforts. Excellencies, distinguished members of the Peacebuilding Commission, it is my honor to invite His Excellency, Mr. Adama Barrow, President of the Republic of the Gambia, to take the floor. Please, President, you have the floor, sir.
Chair of the Peacebuilding Commission, Assistant Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, European Union, UNDP Regional Directors for Africa, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all and thank you for being here. This meeting is an important milestone in gathering support for the Gambia to sustain peace through development. Peace is a strong foundation for justice to prevail and motivate citizens to focus on development. Therefore, I commend your continued efforts in raising awareness for a successful international conference scheduled to be held in Brussels next month. in recognition of the urgent need for peace building and sustaining peace in the Gambia. To restore democracy in the Gambia, my government from its inception has embarked on a number of initiatives with a view to consolidating our democratic gains and good governance. The priorities of my government outline our National Development Plan for 2018-2021 are geared towards economic growth and transformation. In our quest for advancing sustainable peace within and beyond the Gambia, my government is of the strong conviction that democracy, transparency, rule of law, and economic growth must be mainstream in our national efforts to build and sustain peace. In our resolve to achieve sustainable peace in the Gambia, good governance, institutional reforms, and people-centered approaches will continue to inform our peace-building efforts. As partners, we know that civil society plays a crucial role in peace-building and sustaining peace. Therefore, we encourage a new and vigorous role for civil society. My government is strongly committed to providing a peaceful environment for the citizenry to develop their full potential. To achieve our goal, I believe that it is the collective responsibility of the government, private sector, civil societies, intergovernmental organizations, and our partners in general to make sure Brussels is a success. We must work together to ensure the vision as expressed in the National Development Plan is converted into reality. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in 5 years, I envisage a collective success story that creates jobs for all, especially the youth, and one that provides food and nutrition security. Our success story must tell how we converted our dreams to reality and curb irregular migration. In 5 years, we must narrate our story of good governance and democracy with pride and become a model for other countries. I therefore encourage you to have a fruitful discussion as I look forward to a successful meeting and an enriched outcome document. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your words and remarks. I now would like to invite His Excellency Mr. Neven Mimica, European Commissioner for the International Cooperation and Development, to take the floor. Please, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. My dear friend, President Barrow, distinguished Commission members, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It was just over a year ago, President Barrow, that I had the honor of being the first international partner to visit and congratulate you and the people of the Gambia on your peaceful and successful transition of power. During my visit, I saw a young and positive country yearning for freedom and democracy. And I met a new and ambitious government full of fresh ideas and determination. The European Union was the first to step up, not only with material support, but also in terms of ideas and guidance to your efforts to shape a better future for the Gambia. The rest of the international community quickly followed suit. And it was shortly after my visit that the first meeting of the Peace Building Commission on the Gambia was held right here last April. Its focus was, above all, to ensure stability and to support the essential reforms that you needed to undertake. Our first ever budget support program to the Gambia, designed to reinforce your new democratic institutions, began in July 2017 with 25 million euros. Today, I'm proud to say that your progress has been impressive and that our partnership has continued to grow. You are now firmly on the path of democracy and reform, which will allow more inclusive growth and prosperity for all. The National Development Plan, which you have just presented, clearly identifies your priorities for the coming years, and it will allow us to discuss concrete targets and how we can best accompany you and support you in achieving them. We fully agree with its 8 priorities, and the 150 million euros we have allocated under our 11th European Development Fund align fully with them under the 3 areas we agreed together: governance and support to democratic reforms, inclusive sustainable growth and jobs creation, and renewable energy, infrastructure and climate change. The expectations to quickly consolidate democratic reforms and to translate them into economic dividends are understandably high. We are determined to help support inclusive growth through sustainable agriculture development and job creation in rural areas. The private sector will also play an important role in economic recovery. But we need to ensure that the right conditions and business climate are created, including, for example, by improving access to energy. Most of all, we need to ensure that the Gambia's huge human potential is fulfilled. As you have said many times, President Barrow, the Gambia needs their youth to build the nation. The European Union will continue to support education and women's and girls' empowerment, and to support your efforts to provide brighter prospects closer to home for a more prosperous future for the next generation. I understand there is a nice Gambian traditional proverb which says that giant silk cotton trees grow out of very tiny seeds. The seed has indeed already been laid, and it is now up to all of us to water and nurture it, and to ensure together that the new Gambia can truly flourish. So let me conclude by once again confirming our full support to your democratic transition and to accompany you on the path towards more inclusive and sustainable development. You have my personal commitment to help mobilize all the political and financial support needed from the international community to help deliver your new National Development Plan. It is in this context that I am pleased to announce that together with the government of the Gambia, we are organizing an international donors conference in Brussels on the 22nd of May, followed by a business forum, which I hope will attract strong participation and contributions. And remember, every drop counts. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Mimica for his intervention, and I now invite Honorable Amadou Sanneh, Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs of the Gambia, to take the floor. Please, Minister.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, Excellency Commissioner of the European Union, honorable members of the High Table, distinguished guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. We are grateful for this opportunity to present to you our National Development Plan in the context of the challenges that this country, the Gambia, has been facing since the change in its administration in January 2017. The Gambia needs new government inherited very challenging situations in the country. And I briefly summarize this just to give a background and a context for the National Development Plan. There was serious economic mismanagement for the 22 years of a dictator that had no regard to the rule of law, financial controls, fiscal management, human rights, or whatever. He did as he pleased. The result of this mismanagement was that he siphoned and diverted public resources for his own personal use. And today, serious evidences are coming out of the commissions that has been established to look into his affairs. This has left the country with a very fragile financial situation, and I wouldn't be wrong to say a bankrupt country when this new government took over. The public debt stood at 124% of the GDP, and the interest rates were so high that it discouraged investments by the private sector. Inflation and exchange rates were all fluctuating, rising unstably, and causing serious ripples in the economy. We also inherited a high level of poverty and socioeconomic vulnerability. There was really very poor access to, and the quality of public services were very poor. This is both in health, education, infrastructure, and agriculture as well. There were weak institutions in the sense that all the state-owned enterprises were found to be near bankruptcy. And this new government had to take steps to try to address the very dire situation in which our state-owned enterprises were found to be in. Political repressions, human rights violations, lack of freedom of speech were characteristic of the 22 years of this dictatorship. And the Gambia was very isolated by the international community. So in this context, the new government faced this challenge to stabilize the political situation, for which we are glad to say we have just concluded a successful local government election, and on May 15 we'll also have the mayoral elections. Governance and rule of law has been improved, and there are measures to strengthen the democratic instruments of the country. There is a constitutional reform process that is starting, and there is also a review of the electoral laws. And one example will be our foreign minister, who was our Secretary General of the United Democratic Party, was excluded by legislation to say if you are above 65, you cannot stand for the presidency. These were some of the things that he embedded in the Constitution, and lack of term limit, and so many others which are now all being addressed. In our economic management, we engage in serious fiscal consolidation, and we try to reduce the borrowing level, domestic borrowing. And after 1 year of this economic management, we have seen signs of success in that interest rates, commercial borrowing fell from 24% to 18%. The borrowing rates on the Treasury bill fell from 18% to 6%, and inflation has stabilized around 5.4%. We have done efforts, and we have seen that our domestic revenues, in mainly taxes, have been increasing, and serious efforts are there to restructure our public debt with our international creditors. Now, in addition, the government has embarked on some reforms which have helped over the year, lifting off the restrictions in foreign exchange transactions by forcing commercial banks to sell 15% of their forex purchases to the central bank. This has been removed. And our gross international reserves has now improved from less than 2 weeks of import cover to now about over four months of import cover. And this was achieved with the help of our international partners in budget support and other forms of project support. Other reforms that remain outstanding, which are being carried out in the human resource review, staff audit of the civil service, and then the power sector is being reformed because we have serious issues with the energy sector. Governance also is being strengthened in the SOEs. Management changes have been made, and there are new controls in their fiscal operations. We also have reforms in the security sector, which has a direct impact on the peace and stability of this new democracy. And we are glad that the UN Peace Building Commission had taken initiatives and visited the country, and we are sharing with the UN rep, together with the ECOWAS representative there, to forge ahead with these reforms, at least before the end of the term of the economic forces, so that we have a stable and a viable security system. Now, with all these reforms, the challenges that this new government faces are significant. And we have issues with almost all the sectors. The energy sector especially, to try to achieve a consistent and stable power supply at affordable cost remains a big challenge. And this has a cross-cutting effect in the sense that this year we are glad our tourism has really bounced back, and we have full bookings in our hotels, but I don't think we can keep the tourists much longer if the powers have to be going on and off. So this energy sector is a critical constraint for the growth in various sectors. In the tourism sector, in the health sector, in agriculture or light industries, energy remains a top priority for this administration. So we have looked at all these sectors and came up with this National Development Plan through a very comprehensive participatory process, including our partners on the ground in Gambia, the UN, the EU representatives, the World Bank, the IMF, were all involved, and the other UN agencies, UNESCO and WHO, they were all involved in the formulation and in the preparation of the strategies in this National Development Plan. So we have come out with a vision in this plan to have the highest standards of governance, accountability, and transparency, and social cohesion, and to forge harmony among communities, and thereby improving the living standards of the population. The NDP has 41 flagship projects, and these have been categorized into 4 main clusters. We have the governance cluster, which includes constitutional review, transitional justice, and the strengthening of the legal system, the civil service reform program, and also decentralized planning and development to make it very inclusive, to take account of all the regions of the country. The second cluster is agriculture and fisheries, and here the projects include the Enhanced Livestock Production and Productivity Program, Horticulture Value Chain Development Projects, and Rice Value Chain Development Projects. Some of you would wonder why rice value chain specifically. The Gambia's staple food is rice, and today we are importing over 83% of our need. Although we have suitable land and water, the river runs right across the country, and half of that is fresh water suitable for irrigation. But the constraints there are that the technology, the systems of farming and agriculture are archaic, old systems which have yielded very little output. As a result, the youths and a lot of the workforce have turned their backs on agriculture because they are not generating enough income from that activity. So we look for partners to have investments in agriculture in the forms of agribusiness to generate employment for the youths as well as income for the mainly rural population, the women who are engaged. Over 70% of women are engaged in agriculture, women. So this would really help have multiple benefits in food security and increasing income, generating employment for the youths. Then the other project here is improvements in fisheries infrastructure for social development. The third cluster is on human capital, that is improving and strengthening the health systems. The projects here aim to strengthen the primary healthcare system and the equipment and capacitization of the existing referral hospitals. Because most of the cases now, for those who can afford it, they cross the border to go to Senegal, or others go to other countries for treatment. So the standards are extremely low, and we need to strengthen this for the benefit of the majority who cannot afford to travel outside to get treatment. Then the other human capital element is access to basic education, to improve access and the quality of education, and to increase vocational and skills development centers to train the youths and improve their capacity to go into the private sector and make their training more relevant to the market. Then there is also transforming one of our technical training institutes into a University of Technology and Engineering. Again, all these are to develop capacities to make them relevant to the market. It involves also youth empowerment programs and women empowerment programs as well. Now, the fourth cluster is infrastructure. Energy is one, which is a top priority, as I have just explained. Then you have the transport and ICT infrastructure. We need over 500 kilometers of rural roads and about 525 kilometers in the Greater Banjul area, it's around the capital. Then we have the port expansion project, which we see as an element which is critical for our economic growth. Because now, because of increase in business confidence, we have an increasing number of vessels coming to the port. And what's happening is a lot of them have to stay upstream for a week, some up to 10 days or 2 weeks, for which importers are suffering demurrage charges because of the delays in offloading these vessels. So the ports expansion project would have a very good impact in the economy. It will create jobs, and it will expand business opportunities that the country has to offer. Now, we're also looking under this infrastructure, the river transport system. Despite the fact that the river runs right through the middle of the country and all the year, today we do not have any river boat that runs through the length of this country. The last one sank some time back, and since then there has not been any river boat available to the country. So, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, I think these challenges featured in the National Development Plan can transform the Gambia's critical economic and governance situation and bring Gambia back into the community of nations in a prosperous and growth-oriented economy program. We are presenting this program to our partners to share with us these challenges and try to achieve the results of this transformation and make the Gambia a model country that has changed from a dictatorial regime into a democratic and prosperous nation. So really, on 22nd May, we have this international conference co-chaired by the European Union, and we are grateful for the very strong efforts the European Union has been doing to organize and coordinate this conference. And we look forward to a successful conference, and we count on all of you to support this program and change Gambia for the better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister, for this comprehensive presentation. I really thank you. I now invite His Excellency Mr. Jean-Claude Brou, President of the ECOWAS Commission, to take the floor. Please, sir.
Son Excellence, Monsieur.
Your Excellency, Mr. Adama Barrow, President of the Republic of the Gambia, distinguished members of the Peacebuilding Commission of the United Nations, Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we're very pleased to take part in this meeting on Gambia. As you are aware, ECOWAS has always been a partner of the Gambia as a member of our community. Since the elections in December 2016, ECOWAS has been present in the Gambia with observation and mediation missions backed up by a standby force to ensure respect for the aspirations of the people of the Gambia and to support the Gambia in its democratic process, as well as to strengthen peace and stability. The ECOWAS standby force the standby force mandate is to expire on May 2018. However, it is expected to be renewed. The recent decision by the heads of state of ECOWAS to place these forces under ECOWAS leadership is a sign of the community's firm commitment to assist the authorities of the Gambia in their reforms and in their goal of strengthening peace and stability. Together with other partners, ECOWAS has also been supporting authorities of the Gambia in reforming the security sector and the justice sector. The National Development Plan 2018-2021 of the Gambia, which has been presented to us, covers all priority sectors of the ECOWAS agenda as well. To cite an example, democratic governance, peace and security, employment, agriculture, infrastructure, energy, and the social sector. ECOWAS is already involved in discussions with partners on providing support for employment in ECOWAS countries, and Gambia being the first country on the list. To demonstrate its ongoing commitment to supporting Gambia, ECOWAS will be present in Brussels to support the country in presenting its National Development Plan 2018-2021. ECOWAS also calls on all partners, development organizations, financial partners, and the private sector to support Gambian authorities in mobilizing resources in order to fund the National Development Plan. I thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Brou for his remarks, and I call on His Excellencies Mrs. Fatima Kiari Mohammed, African Union Permanent Observer to the United Nations, to take the floor. Please, Madam.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellency Adama Barrow, President of the Republic of Gambia, and his representatives, Excellencies, fellow panelists, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to stand on existing protocols. At the outset, allow me to thank the Chair of the Peacebuilding Commission, members of the Peacebuilding Organizational Committee, and the Peacebuilding Support Office for organizing this important high-level meeting on the situation in the Gambia and for inviting the African Union to participate. I wish to also convey His Excellency Commissioner Ismail Shergay's deep regrets for his conflicting calendar, which prevented him from personally taking part in this meeting. The African Union views this meeting as a unique opportunity to build on and expand the political momentum for peace building and sustainable development support to the Gambia and to bring to bear the African Union's perspectives to this dialogue. Since March 2017, the African Union has been engaged with the current government of the Gambia at the latter's request for support in the following key areas: Truth and Reconciliation Commission, security sector reform, rapid inclusive socioeconomic transformation, repealing of draconian laws, and changing of foreign policy posture for the country. It will be recalled that the African Union conducted a needs assessment mission to the Gambia in May 2017 in order to provide concrete recommendations on how the AU could support the new Gambian authorities. The assessment mission, however, limited its scope to national dialogue and reconciliation, security sector reform, and socioeconomic transformation. It broadly assessed the national requirements for promotion of human rights, justice, and national cohesion, reform and professionalization of the security sector institutions, including creating conditions conducive for the country's rapid and inclusive socioeconomic transformation. The assessment mission also identified priority areas for the African Union's immediate and medium-term support, stakeholders and partners willing to support a nationally led socioeconomic transformation, governance, and peace-building initiatives in the country, and how the needs of women and youth could best be mainstreamed to make the transition process more inclusive. I am pleased to report that planning for the deployment of these experts is at an advanced stage. In addition, informed by another assessment mission to the Gambia in June 2017, the Peace and Security Council decided that the AU should deploy 10 technical, military, and civilian advisory staff to support the Gambia's ongoing efforts on truth, reconciliation, reparation, human rights, promotion of constitutionalism and rule of law, and the security sector reform process. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, permit me to underline the following three key messages. First, there's an imperative need for a balanced approach to the Gambia's transitional justice process, that is, the Truth Commission and judicial processes. Secondly, it is important to enhance coordination of bilateral and multilateral support for the security sector in order to ensure coherence and complementarity of external support in line with the vision and priorities of the government. And thirdly, in order to stimulate economic growth and transform the economy of the Gambia, it is of critical necessity to support the country along its prioritized areas of modernizing agriculture, including through irrigation systems, development and expansion of fisheries, revitalizing the energy services to power its economy, and boosting tourism, including through public-private partnerships in the various sectors. And I think we heard some of the details that were presented by the Minister. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to conclude by congratulating the Gambian government for some of the notable positive steps taken towards peace building and sustaining peace through transitional justice, security sector reform, and constitutional review, as well as the elaboration of its 5-year national development plan, which was just presented. The people of the Gambia have huge expectations from their new government, and they are impatient for immediate dividends. Therefore, investing in the people, particularly by empowering youth and women through improved education, health, and employment opportunities, could help in meeting these expectations. We sincerely applaud the efforts of the government and encourage international partners to support peace building and sustainable development in the Gambia. As the President rightly said, it is our collective responsibility. The success story is just waiting to happen. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellencies Mrs. Mohammed, and now I invite Mr. Taye Zerihun, Acting Under Secretary General for Political Affairs, to take the floor. Please, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the UN Department of Political Affairs appreciates this opportunity to exchange views on developments in the Gambia and also on how best we can all continue to support and assist the country. The Peacebuilding Commission is an indispensable part of the support and assistance provided by the international community to the Gambia. Likewise, the UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel and its head, the Special Representative of the Secretary General, Mr. Mohammed Ibn Shambas, are also crucial to the UN engagement in the Gambia. Since the last meeting of the Peacebuilding Commission on the Gambia on December 4th last year, the country has continued to make progress in achieving key priorities in the areas of transitional justice, constitutional review, judicial and civil service reform, as well as on economic development. As was noted earlier, last December, Parliament approved 2 bills establishing the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission and the National Human Rights Commission. An executive secretary and members of the TRRC have been appointed. Local elections were successfully held on the 12th of April, and preparations are proceeding for municipal council elections in May. The tangible progress achieved so far attests to the consolidation of democratic gains in the Gambia and the strides the country has made in transitioning from 2 decades of dictatorship to multi-party democratic rule. The Gambia has also made notable advances in its bilateral relations with its neighbors, notably Senegal, and a Senegal-Gambia Presidential Council has now been established. We hope and expect to see more progress in the areas of national reconciliation and security sector reform. Mr. Chairman, the United Nations is working in the Gambia to help sustain peace. Following the UN interagency mission to the country last year, the Department of Political Affairs and the United Nations Development Programme, in close collaboration with the Peacebuilding Support Office, have focused on the implementation of an integrated UN strategy in support of the Gambia in the areas of transitional justice, security sector reform, inclusive political dialogue, and sub-regional cooperation. The PBSO has funded projects in support of security sector reform and transitional justice. It has also funded the provision of strategic policy support to the presidency. The Department of Political Affairs also provided funds for the deployment of a strategic communications expert who provided support to the Office of the President from May through December last year. With respect to funding for the long-term development priorities of the country, the Department of Political Affairs adds its voice to the call to member states to pledge the required financial resources to the government to meet the priorities outlined in its National Development Plan. The United Nations will continue to remain actively engaged in the Gambia to support the country's efforts to build the foundations for a democratic republic that respects the rule of law and meets the security and development needs of its citizens. The Special Representative for West Africa and the Office, UNOWAS, will continue to conduct regular good offices and technical missions to support the government in its efforts to build resilience in all sectors. Mr. Chairman, the success of peace building in the Gambia is contingent on political and institutional stability, good governance, and strong national ownership. It is commendable that the Peace Building Commission continues to make a decisive contribution in support of the country's peace-building priorities. The international community and regional partners deserve praise for their sustained engagement in the Gambia. Let me conclude, Mr. Chairman, by my brief remarks by thanking members of the Peace Building Commission for their commitment to support the Gambia in its efforts to achieve sustainable peace. I thank you.
I thank you too, Mr. Zerihun, for your remarks. And now I invite Mr. Abdoulaye Mardieye, Assistant Secretary General and Head of UNDP Global Policy Bureau, to take the floor. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to attend on behalf of UNDP this high-level meeting of the Peace Building Commission on the Gambia. It is my expectation that our encounter this morning will be a pre-resonance of what we project to be a successful international conference in a month's time. New York today and Brussels in 30 days will be, with no doubt, moments of reaffirmation that the Gambia is back and ready to reclaim its natural position as the gateway to the continent and a potential leading geo-economic platform for West Africa. The country will not walk alone on that path, as the nation has generated a huge capital of sympathy and has rightly earned an international badge of honor in its right fight to restore the universal enlightenment principles of peace, social justice, good neighborhood, human rights, dignity, and freedom. The National Development Plan just presented to us by Minister Sanneh will be a powerful compass in that journey. It illustrates the vision and leadership of the government to lay the foundations for a modern democratic state, while also addressing the most pressing economic, social, and environmental challenges of the country. The plan, through its alignment with Agenda 2030 and Agenda Africa 2063 and other regional and international commitments, lays the framework for making sustainable development a reality in the Gambia, while also encapsulating the principles of sustaining peace, enhancing resilience, and leaving no one behind. The plan will be a moment of transformation. Essential for this transformation is building social cohesion and reconciliation and sustaining peace. Rebuilding the social contract and resecuring people's trust in the government through the implementation of the plan will allow for consolidating development gains, ensuring that societies and groups can live in harmony with each other. The plan must also be a moment to deliver development results with a sense of urgency, as deprivation has been striking for too long, with an average poverty rate of 48% nationwide and about 70% in rural areas, hence much above the already too high average rural poverty rate of 65% in Africa. Drawing from the successful experience of emergency community development programs, or PUDC in French, Programme d'urgence de développement communautaire, implemented in Senegal and Togo, UNDP can support countries like the Gambia to replicate successful fast-track development models that have produced tangible results, particularly for vulnerable segments of the population, including women and youth and this in a very, very short time frame. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we all remember Lee Kuan Yew, who took a city-state smaller than New York and turned it into a giant powerhouse in the global financial hub. He made history. He gave us a lot of lessons, yet simple but potent, on how to transform an economy, a nation, and a society. His key advice is to have a clear vision of the future and execute it in a sustained and disciplined manner. The Gambia's National Development Plan embodies a clear and shared vision, the Gambia we want. I am quite convinced that if we all line up behind this vision in a disciplined manner, as Lee would put it, and provide the required support, Singapore will soon flourish at the gateway to Africa. I thank you.
I thank Mr. Mar Dieye for his remarks, and I now invite Mr. Fernandez Taranco, Assistant Secretary General for Peacebuilding Support, to take the floor. Please, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, State Secretary, Excellencies, distinguished members of the Peacebuilding Commission, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking His Excellency President Adama Barrow and Honorable Amadou Sanneh for the briefings to the Peacebuilding Commission this morning, and also to state my heartfelt appreciation for this joint briefing between the European Union, the African Union, ECOWAS, DPA, UNDP. I think this truly shows the way that the Peacebuilding Commission is changing its working methods and the power of its convening role ahead of this very important donors conference that will be held next month, and in response to the national peacebuilding and development plans that were presented by the minister. Maybe to recall that the 2016 twin resolutions of the Security Council and the General Assembly state how central peacebuilding and sustaining peace is first and foremost about enhancing coherence and pursuing an integrated and strategic approach across the entire UN system, and the importance of partnerships with other international and regional actors in support of member state-led efforts of the sort that we just heard about. And talking about partnerships, maybe to inform the membership that this morning PBSO signed with the president of the ECOWAS Commission, Jean-Claude Brou, sitting here today briefing us. We signed a memorandum of understanding precisely to strengthen the collaboration between our institutions on subjects such as conflict prevention, political dialogue, national reconciliation, democratic governance, human rights, and the rule of law. And particularly, this is important because of the very important role that ECOWAS has had in the Gambia, and to see how we can follow up on the interlinkage between peace and security, development, human rights, and good governance going forward. So again, to thank President Barrow and Honorable Minister Sanneh for clearly outlining this vision and the goal of the Gambia National Development Plan, again, which is a very good example of how the country is prioritizing peace and sustainable development priorities. And I would like to encourage that the government continue promoting this people-centered approach and ensuring this inclusive national ownership in sustaining peace efforts. My colleagues have mentioned the importance of responding rapidly to the democratic transition in the Gambia, something that we have done, I think, delivering as one between Secretariat, agencies, funds, and programs, and again, facilitated in part by the rapid disbursement of the fast, flexible funding from the Peacebuilding Fund to support security sector reform, transitional justice, and its support to reconciliation, and also projects that seek to empower women and youth and make them participate in this national reconciliation and dialogue process. So let me conclude by stressing how important it is that member states continue to support. This is a crucial tenet of the sustaining peace and peace-building approach, the sustained attention that is required to the Gambia to be able to continue to build on its initial peace building and sustainable development priorities. And I hope that there will be an important turnout at the donor roundtable meeting being organized in Brussels, and that member states will be able to again confirm and commit to the national development plans by providing the necessary assistance. PBSO will be participating, and we will be making an important announcement regarding the allocation of peace-building funding to precisely align behind the peace-building priorities contained in such a plan. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I thank Mr. Fernandez Taranco for his briefing. And now I would like to open the floor for comments by the members of the PBC. First, I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Republic of Korea. Please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for convening this very timely meeting on the Gambia on the eve of the high-level event on sustaining peace. I would also like to thank President Barrow and Minister Sanneh for coming to the PBC and sharing the national priorities of the Gambia. My appreciation also to other briefers as well for sharing their perspectives on the Gambia. I'm particularly pleased to meet President Barrow again here in New York. Since my visit to Banjul in my capacity as the chair of the PBC last year, things have been moving steadily in the right direction, and I'd like to commend his leadership for the remarkable progress made during the last 1 year in reforming the Gambia across the board. With all these achievements, however, we know that a lot more needs to be done as the country is faced with so many challenges, including the need to meet the high level of expectations of its people and sustain international support for its peace-building priorities. In this regard, we welcome the Gambian government's initiative to convene a donors conference and business roundtable in Brussels next month with the support of the European Union to secure international support for its national development plan and present itself as a new business destination. Today's meeting of the PBC could help provide political support for the Gambian government in preparing for the Brussels event, and I hope that member states, as well as the United Nations Secretariat, agencies, funds and programs come together to provide coordinated and holistic support to the Gambia so that it can move ahead smoothly with its national priorities in building and sustaining peace. We should do so not only because the Gambia is at its critical time of transition, but more importantly, because it provides a perfect test case of the UN's collective efforts towards sustaining peace. Although the United Nations has been providing valuable support to the Gambia through the Peacebuilding Fund, we feel that more concerted efforts are needed. To this end, the resident coordinator, who has been doing an impressive job in assisting the Gambian government during its transition, should be further empowered with the necessary capacity so that she can effectively coordinate the UN agencies as well as outside partners, including donor countries, international financial institutions, and the private sector. And the PBC should support the resident coordinator by continuing to mobilize the relevant stakeholders both within and outside the UN with the support of the PBSO as it plays the hinge role across the UN system. We hope that the UN system will not lose the opportunity to provide the necessary assistance that the Gambia needs at this critical juncture. We also welcome the Gambia's focus on promoting the private sector, education, and creating jobs for the youth. This is the right approach in view of Korea's development experiences in the aftermath of a devastating war in the early 1990s. We had systematically strengthened the domestic private sector by allocating more than 2/3 of foreign assistance from multilateral development banks and donor countries. This served as the main locomotive behind economic growth and sustained peace in Korea. Finally, we would like to encourage PBC members to pledge commitments at the Donors Conference in May. In the case of Korea, we decided last week to provide support to the Gambia's criminal justice and prison reform. We will continue to consult with the Gambian government to explore further ways to assist the country. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Next, I would like to give the floor to the esteemed representative of Germany. Please, sir, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of the panel, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the Chair of the Peacebuilding Commission for convening this meeting in collaboration with the government of the Gambia. The Gambia is almost a textbook case for sustaining peace, with the UN and regional organizations working together to resolve a conflict and thereby preventing a further escalation. We welcome that the Peacebuilding Commission, on request of the government of the Gambia, took over from the Security Council after the successful resolution of the conflict to support peacebuilding in the country. Germany is a strong advocate for peace, democracy, human rights and the rule of law worldwide. We fully support the new Gambian government in sharing these values, and we are convinced that the democratic change in the Gambia will have a positive impact on the region as a whole. We underscore the very importance that the international community acts swiftly to show its support for the new Gambian government. In this regard, we welcome the fact that the government of the Gambia and the European Union co-organize the international conference for the Gambia on the 22nd of May in Brussels. We also welcome the catalytic support of the Peacebuilding Fund to the Gambia in the areas of transitional justice and security sector reform. We need to ensure that this support is sustained and in due course transition to other peacebuilding and development actors. In this regard, I welcome the presence of the World Bank and UNDP and hope that this meeting will translate into further action for peacebuilding on the ground. In December, German Federal President Steinmeier was the first European head of state to visit the Gambia since the political change in the country and sent a signal of Germany's firm support for the new Gambia. During his visit, President Steinmeier announced specific initial measures to provide immediate help, e.g. to improve the scarce supply of electric power in the country. Germany also supports the endeavors of the African Union to advance the security sector reform needed in the Gambia and contributed more than $1 million to the African Union Peace Fund in 2017 to establish an early response mechanism for transitional justice and security sector reform. We will remain committed to supporting the Gambia on its path to sustainable, peaceful and democratic development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of India. Please, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we thank the President of the Gambia and other dignitaries for their detailed briefing on the situation in the Gambia. We are meeting against a backdrop of the high-level meeting on peace building and sustaining peace starting tomorrow that will highlight the importance of a more comprehensive approach to peace building. We commend the Peacebuilding Commission for its constructive approach with which it has engaged with the Gambia and welcome its engagement at the critical time of the country's first democratic transition of power. It is the primary responsibility of national governments of countries emerging from conflict to identify priorities and strategies for peace building in order to ensure national ownership. We appreciate the efforts taken by the government of the Gambia in the promotion of transitional justice, stabilization of the economy, and restoration of public confidence and strengthening of democratic institutions as laid out in their National Development Plan 2018-2021. India fully supports the Peacebuilding Commission in its efforts to sustain international attention to the Gambia's peacebuilding and sustainable development priorities by bringing together the members of the PBC and key stakeholders, relevant member states, African Union, Economic Community of West African States, European Union, as well as the United Nations system, the World Bank, and other international financial institutions ahead of the planned international conference in Brussels in May this year. India and the Gambia are close development partners. Prime Minister Modi and President Barrow had fruitful discussions at London only last week, wherein the two leaders agreed to deepen economic as well as cultural ties between both countries. We also recall the participation of the Gambian delegation at the third India-Africa Forum Summit, which showcased multiple dimensions of the India-Africa relationship that is pivoted around trade, training, technology, capacity building, and development partnership. Mr. Chairman, India supports the Gambia in its development and capacity building initiatives and has so far extended soft loans to the tune of US $80 million for implementing projects in various sectors, including water, rural electrification, construction, and agriculture. Gambia has also joined hands with India along with 60 other countries through the International Solar Alliance to build partnerships that aim to achieve sustainable energy goals to provide affordable access to clean energy. In conclusion, we commend the efforts of the PBC as a platform for promoting the national priorities and strategies of the Gambia, which we hope would consolidate peace and achieve prosperity for all the Gambians. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I would like to give now the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. Please, Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. This is a very good day, very good meeting. It's nice to see such strong support for the Gambia, but also it's really good to have in the Peace Building Commission session an emerging success story, and long may it continue. We in the United Kingdom, Mr. Chairman, Her Majesty the Queen has just hosted the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, and I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate President Barrow on the Gambia's re-entry into the Commonwealth, and it was very good to see him take part in that meeting last week. We think this is a very good indication of his new government's commitment to democracy, to good governance, to human rights, and to the rule of law. It's 15 months since the Security Council met to mark the peaceful outcome to the political impasse, and we would like to pay tribute to Senegal for their leadership in the Council. The role that regional organisations played, in particular ECOWAS, in diffusing what was a potentially dangerous situation was critical, and this underscores the cooperation between the United Nations, ECOWAS, and the African Union in the successful resolution of the crisis, and it also demonstrates the central role that such partnerships play in sustaining peace. The United Kingdom would like to commend the progress that President Barrow and his government have made in addressing the challenges and reforms necessary to ensure the future peace and stability of the country. These steps provide a solid basis for continued and sustainable development as set out in the government's own National Development Plan. I'd like to use the opportunity to urge the Gambia to continue to engage with the Peace Building Commission. It's an excellent forum to mobilise partnerships for longer-term support, and also it keeps the international community informed. Gambia has big lessons for the world to hear, and it has made very commendable progress towards long-term peace. The United Kingdom hopes to be a friend and ally to the Gambia. We are united with international partners in our support for the Gambia to become a beacon of democratic freedom within the region. And in addition to our role in the Peace Building Commission here in New York, the United Kingdom will continue to build bilaterally on our support across the human rights, justice, security, and democratic reform agendas, in addition to our contributions through multilateral bodies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Norway.
Thank you very much, Chair, and for having this meeting in the PBC on Gambia. Thank you very much also to the President and the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs of the Gambia for coming here to brief us about the situation in their country. Norway would like to commend the Gambia for successfully carrying out municipal elections on the 12th of April. This is an important element in securing a sound democratic development in the Gambia. It is equally important that the presidential election scheduled for late 2019 or early 2020 be carried out as planned. Norway strongly supports the Gambia's endeavors towards a stable democracy, reform of the judicial system, and the strengthening of human rights. The transfer of power to a democratically elected government in the Gambia was an important signal to authoritarian regimes. The democratic development that we are now seeing may serve as an example for other African countries to follow. Human rights and democracy are at the heart of Norwegian foreign policy and the work of the UN. We truly believe that attention to the human rights situation in one's own country is vital to prevent violent conflict. Norway promotes democracy and human rights through political dialogue, including through multilateral forums such as the African Union and the Economic Community of West African States. Norway supports the main goals outlined by the government of the Gambia in its National Development Plan. We note the focus on modernizing the fisheries and agricultural sectors for sustainable economic growth, building infrastructure and restoring sustainable energy services. Inclusive and sustainable development is both an end in itself and by far the most efficient way to prevent conflict. So we wish the government of the Gambia good luck, and we will continue supporting you. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Sweden.
Thank you, Chair, and let me join others in thanking you for organizing this important meeting. I would also like to thank, through the Minister, also the President of Gambia for being here today and to set out a clear vision for peace building in his country, but also to you, Mr. Finance Minister, for having laid out and elaborated on the areas of priority for support that you see. We had the great fortune to be President of the Security Council in January last year when the political crisis in Gambia escalated. And we worked very closely with our brothers from Senegal on the council at the time, Liberia as the head of, or the chair of ECOWAS, the African Union, of course, the SG, often directly through his representative, Mr. Chambas, as well as directly with the then president-elect, to really coordinate efforts to make sure that we avoid escalation and to ensure that a peaceful democratic transition could take place. And I think it was a true team work effort, and I think it can really serve as a textbook example on effective conflict prevention in line with the Secretary General's vision for a search for diplomacy for peace. But now we really need to turn this success also into a success of sustaining peace. And as the German colleague said, to make sure that Gambia becomes a textbook example also of sustaining peace. And there is a lot of lessons learned to draw from, and I hope that the Peace Building Commission and the UN system together can be actively sharing those lessons and actively continue to support the country as we move forward. Let me highlight three areas. First, we need to sustain attention and support, of course. Expectations are high, understandably so, and we need to help the government to deliver on these expectations. Reforms are important. They have been raised here today, including for good governance, institutional capacity, and security sector reform. And we welcome that what the President said about including civil society actively in this process. But the broader development agenda is, of course, also critical. Part of this is the importance of traditional development partnership, and here we see the Brussels conference upcoming as key. But it's also about supporting private sector and trade, as has been referred to today, and not least in the tourist sector. In all of this, we really hope that the UN country team, including UNDP, will have the resources necessary to strengthen its capacity to support the government in this important transition phase, and to do so, as Oscar laid out, in a coherent and integrated way, building on extensive partnerships. We also hope that the UN Peacebuilding Commission can continue to play a critical role in mobilizing support and coordinating these international efforts. And in this regard, again, let me congratulate you in organizing the meeting today. In conclusion, Mr. Chair, we look forward to continue to be engaged to help ensure that the success of Gambia is sustained and that the trajectory towards peace and prosperity for all Gambians continue. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
I thank you, Chair. The delegation of Senegal welcomes the organisation of this important meeting, which is illustrative of your efforts and those of the Peacebuilding Commission to keep international attention on the Republic of the Gambia. Our delegation is therefore delighted to see the participation of His Excellency Mr. Adama Barrow, President of the Republic of the Gambia, and the important statement which he made this morning. We also welcome the presence here of Ministers, Their Excellencies Mr. Amadou Sanneh and Mr. Dabu, in charge of Finance and Foreign Affairs. We also welcome the participation of the President of the ECOWAS Commission, His Excellency Mr. Jean-Claude Brou. Chair, the peaceful, successful political transition that took place in the Gambia under the leadership of President Barrow and with the support of the international community, and in particular the ECOWAS, but also the African Union and the United Nations, has allowed for a new beginning for the Gambia based upon the rule of law, human rights and democracy. Henceforth, the Senegalese delegation believes that it is the duty of the international community to capitalise upon this example given by the Gambia, which will remain one of the most successful examples this decade in conflict prevention. And we must build upon and capitalise on this experience to develop a peace-building model. In this regard, Senegal welcomes the choice of the Gambia as a test country in the implementation of the sustaining peace concept. It is indeed crucial to accompany the Gambian government in its determined efforts for security, economic and political recovery, which we believe is the only sign of lasting stability for a country, but also the only way to allow the Gambian people to have the deserved fruits of democracy and peace. I can commend already the efforts made in this direction by the Peacebuilding Commission and the Peacebuilding Fund. We also welcome the rapid assistance provided by other partners. I'm thinking of the European Union, for example. Chair, the Senegal believes that above and beyond these bodies, it is the whole international community which must be mobilised in order to act in a coherent and coordinated way in assisting the Gambia in implementing its National Development Plan 2018 to 2021. The outlines of this plan have been given to us very clearly by the Finance Minister today. This support must, of course, be provided by dispersing necessary financing in order to implement the plan. These priorities include youth employment and agriculture, and of course other areas as well. linked to security and social areas, for example. This is why we strongly hope that the International Donors Conference on the Gambia on the 22nd of May 2018 in Brussels will meet the legitimate expectations of the government and the Gambian people. Of course, as far as we're concerned, Senegal will remain in full solidarity with the Republic of the Gambia, within the spirits of our strategic and dynamic partnership that Their Excellencies Macky Sall and President Barrow have set up, and with high-level follow-up within the context of the Senegal and Gambian high-level conference that the President and Secretary General Dairoun was talking about. In this context, it will be meeting every 6 months in order to oversee the implementation of shared projects which are a powerful integration factor between our two countries. This is happening because the two heads of state fully believe that our two countries are facing similar challenges and can thus serve as a model for integration in West Africa, Africa, and the world as a whole. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. Let me first thank you for organizing this important meeting with the participation of President Adama Barrow, Minister Amadou Sanneh, and other distinguished speakers from the UN system and regional organizations. In the beginning of 2017, the Security Council gave its support to ECOWAS and the African Union's decision to uphold Mr. Barrow's election as the third president of the Gambia. After that, this Peace-Building Commission has already gathered twice upon request of the new Gambian government. Today's meeting is another sound example of our efforts to render the Peace-Building Commission's forms of engagement more flexible and adaptive to the increasingly complex world security context. Let us take this as an opportunity to consider creative ways through which the United Nations can continue their support for the consolidation of peace in the Gambia. Mr. Chair, Brazil defends that it's a great importance that the international community as a whole, including the PBC, remains fully committed to supporting the Gambia in its critical moment of its history. At the same time, we very much welcome your government's efforts to strengthen the Gambia's engagement in multilateral spaces, as well as to establish new partnership abroad. Despite the existing social and cultural bonds between our societies and our common South Atlantic identity, Brazil and the Gambian bilateral relations fell far short of their true potential. In fact, the Gambia is the only member of the South Atlantic Peace and Cooperation Zone, ZOPACAS, that does not host a Brazilian embassy yet. But this, of course, leaves us with a unique opportunity to promote and strengthen our cooperation and raise our partnership to unprecedented levels. Mr. Chair, Brazil has always strived to nurture a strategic partnership with African countries and match every wave for friendship and approximation coming from across the South Atlantic. Last month, the Gambia invited our ambassador in Dakar to Banjul to present his credentials as the Brazilian ambassador to the Gambia. And he was told that the Gambia was aiming for the reset of the Brazilian-Gambian relationship. Mr. Chair, rest assured that Gambians can count with the Brazilian partnership in the realization of their very legitimate aspirations for commencing a new cycle of sustainable peace and development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Italy. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I would like to thank you for your presence here today in chairing this important and timely meeting, and through you, the Romanian presidency of the Peace Building Commission, for organizing this meeting. Of course, we have been honored of the presence of the President Barrow, such as the high-level delegation that accompany him. This is basically because the Gambia represents how the implementation of peace building and sustaining peace agenda must be a priority for all of us. The concept of prevention, international and regional coordination, UN strong engagement, also throughout this commission, which has played an incredible work that I would like to comment today. A constant and committed political dialogue, which have so well served in overcoming the political crisis, are deep-rooted in the peace-building and sustaining peace paradigm, and your experience must serve as a role model in this sense. At this stage, we cannot relent our effort in supporting the realization of full and inclusive development for the Gambia. We welcome the National Development Plan, in particular the emphasis placed by the document on youth and women empowerment. These are the living force of the nation, and from our perspective in the past years, we have seen too many of them losing their lives in the desert on the Mediterranean Sea, looking for a better future. Mr. President, Italy confirmed its engagement toward the Gambia. We'll stand side by side with the Gambia and its people to accomplish the mission given by the President Barrow, and starting from the meeting that next month the European Union will host in Brussels. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, as much as I would like to see and hear more of you, I just have to make an announcement. We have 7 more speakers in 15 minutes. So would you be so kind and try to, make efforts and limit your intervention so we can get along. Excellent. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Japan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today's meeting is a unique and special occasion as we have the honor to have the President Barrow of the Gambia with us, together with the wide range of distinguished partners. Japan welcomes the encouraging transitional efforts in the Gambia, and we will continue to support the Gambia as it implements its national development plan. The transition of the Gambia is a prime example of the principles of prevention and sustaining peace in action. It is one of the best examples of recent years where the UN worked with regional partners to bring stability through prevention. The PBC attaches great importance to the principle of prevention, and in the case of the Gambia, ECOWAS, the AU, and the UN spoke with one voice, backing the will of the Gambian people. What I see and hear today is very encouraging. We all want to see the Gambia as a success story of sustaining peace. It will not be an easy path for the Gambia to implement the development plan. Expectations are high, especially among the youth. It is still at the fragile state of the transition. Looking at the other countries in West Africa experiencing political transitions, we acknowledge that key institutional reforms need to be steadily implemented. Japan has recently disbursed $1 million to support the youth employment project in the Gambia through the ILO. This is one of the examples of the Japanese continuous support of the Gambia's efforts. Japan will continue to work with all of you in the PBC to support the Gambian government as it builds institutional foundations that respect the rule of law and meet the development needs of the population. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Indonesia. Madam, you have the floor.
First of all, let me thank you, State Minister, for convening and chairing this meeting. We welcome the statement by the President and also Minister for Finance and Economic Affairs of Gambia, in particular the strengthening of collective efforts among all national actors in the peace-building activities. Let me briefly mention 3 points. The first, the national ownership and the regional efforts through ECOWAS and African Union facilitation in Gambia is crucial. We are of the view that political dialogue is key success of peace building in Gambia and encourage all stakeholders to make use dialogue to achieve and build national reconciliation in Gambia. Indonesia believes that inclusiveness is significant to achieve long-lasting peace and sustainable national reconciliations. Second, is partnership. We welcome the signing of MOU between PBSO and ECOWAS in supporting peace building in Gambia. And in this regard, we call and encourage international community to continue to assist Gambia bilaterally and through the peace building fund in strengthening Gambia's national capacities, particularly in area of institutional building, rule of law, justice, education, women, and youth. Third is sustainable efforts. The only way to make peace-building efforts self-sustainable is through boosting economic and development sectors. In this regard, we commend strong efforts by the government of Gambia in establishing development planning as a key element in their effort to achieve long-term stability. Indonesia hopes for the success of the international conference next month in Brussels, with concrete results for the betterment of the government and the people of Gambia. Indonesia stands ready to share our experience when requested. Indonesia stands ready to take part and contribute constructively to peace-building efforts with a view to achieve a long-lasting peace in Gambia. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States. Please, Madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. President Barrow, Minister Sanneh, Excellencies, thank you very much for your insights and briefings. This is an exciting time for the Gambia. The United States is pleased to partner with the Gambia on its continued democratic success and economic development. Congratulations on the completion of the new National Development Plan and on the upcoming International Conference on the Gambia, which the United States looks forward to attending. The U.S. government supports the Gambia through efforts on the part of the Department of State, USAID, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the Department of Justice, and the Department of Homeland Security on programming to strengthen democracy and the justice system, improve health outcomes, encourage economic growth and good governance, and strengthen financial accountability. We look forward to continuing our partnership and encourage the Gambia to stay the course to root out corruption, rebuild institutions, ensure the rule of law, foster economic development, and uphold human rights. The MCC Threshold Program is a great opportunity for the Gambia, and we know that the Ministry of Finance is working closely with the MCC team. We also know that USAID recently launched its 6-month debt management technical assistant project in collaboration with the government. We hope that this program will be of value to the government and support efforts to manage the Gambia's debt in light of limited available resources. Congratulations also on the completion of your recent local elections. By all accounts, these elections were peaceful, free, fair, and transparent. This is an excellent step in the right direction for your democracy, and we are heartened by this progress. We encourage the Gambia to build upon this democratic success moving forward. The Gambia is an example of positive democratic change in West Africa, and the United States looks forward to continuing our partnership. Thank you.
I thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of France. Monsieur, vous avez la parole.
You have the floor, sir.
Merci. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will speak in French to introduce a bit more multilingualism into this meeting. I thank you, Mr. Chair, for convening this meeting of the Peacebuilding Commission, and I'd also like to thank President Barrow and the Minister of Finance for their very enlightening and useful presentations, as well as all the other speakers for their contributions and their support. It has been a year since the resolution on Gambia, and it was an excellent example of preventative diplomacy and cooperation between the UN, the AU, and ECOWAS. And I think the challenge for us now is to use this lesson of success by bringing together support, and we're seeing a lot of this around the room, but support for the Gambian authorities in their efforts to revitalize the economy and carry out a democratic reform that is underway, for instance, in the justice, governance, and other sectors. France has already translated its cooperation into relaunching bilateral cooperation, in particular in the sphere of economic developments, SAR reform, and justice. And we call on all partners to take part in the meeting that will be held in Brussels with the EU on May 22nd, and at which our Secretary of Foreign Affairs will be present. I thank you.
Je vous remercie aussi, and I would like to give now the floor to the distinguished representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. China would like to thank you for convening this meeting. We welcome President Barrow and Minister Sanneh for their participation. We would like to thank all briefers for their presentations. China welcomes President Barrow's efforts to implement the National Development Plan aiming at eradication of poverty and calls on the international community, including regional and sub-regional organizations like ECOWAS and AU and bilateral and multilateral partners, to provide support actively to the nation building of the Gambia. In the end of 2017, President Barrow visited China successfully and carried out fruitful conversations and meetings with President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang of China. China will continue to strengthen our collaboration areas such as agricultural, power, and infrastructure. We will help the Gambia to improve its ability to realize growth on its own and achieve sustainable development. In September this year, China and Africa will hold China-Africa Cooperation Forum Beijing Summit in Beijing. The Gambia is a new member of the family of China-Africa Cooperation Forum. China is willing to work with the Gambia to implement the outcome of the summit and benefit the people of two countries in earnest. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I would like now to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Morocco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Je m'excuse, je vais parler en français.
I will speak in French. Unfortunately, our ambassador had to leave to go to another meeting, so I apologize for him and will make his speech on his behalf. I should like to thank the presidency of the PBC for organising this meeting on a brother-friend country and whose stability affects us all at the highest level here. It is important for countries in the region and for the work of the PBC to recall as much as possible the considerable progress that the Gambia has made, starting with the conduct of the first democratic and peaceful elections, where Mr. Adama Barrow was brought to the head of state and met their aspirations. Since his investiture, nobody should forget that the Gambia has worked very hard. And on the ground, this has been shown in its continued efforts being deployed to make progress. So there is a modern state now based upon the rules of democracy, good governance, respect for human rights and security. It is in this context that the National Development Plan for the Gambia 2018 to 2018 has been designed and delivered with the participation of all the forces and stakeholders in the Gambia. Against this backdrop, this will provide a great deal of clarity for stakeholders in the Gambia, particularly with regard to the actions and priorities of the government to stabilise the economy, restore public trust, strengthen democratic institutions and social cohesion. It is not just by chance that the Gambia now stands as an example of good practice of preventative diplomacy. Peaceful resolution of differences has allowed the Gambia to avoid violence and peacefully protect the will of the people clearly expressed by their vote. There has been unprecedented mobilisation of regional actors, the AU and the ECOWAS, alongside the international community, with full respect for the constitution of the Gambian laws and international law principles. This success story will have an impact on other countries in crisis in Africa or elsewhere, and this is a very illustrative example of what can be done by peace building and sustaining peace. It is in this context, too, that the role and mandate of the PBC is truly reflected. Despite the work done, though, by the Gambia and its partners, it has spared no efforts to increase the resilience of the Gambia during this transitional period. It's important to remember, though, the challenges and threats that still face the Gambia in this new phase of sustaining peace. With the PBC's mandate and government's priorities in the Gambia, now we need to help the Gambia still further with what it has achieved and help it to implement its national development plan. This is a sine qua non stage for sustainable and lasting development in the Gambia. I should just like to remind all Gambians to continue all partners to continue their mobilisation for the Gambia, particularly during the donor conference in Brussels on the 22nd of May. We call upon the PBC to continue their support to the government of the Gambia under the leadership of the President, Mr. Barrow, whether at international, multilateral, international level, or within South-South or bilateral cooperation. Morocco will always provide its own support to the Gambia where it's needed and requested. I thank you.
Je vous remercie aussi. And now I would like to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Colombia.
Muchas gracias, presidente, y gracias por organizar.
I thank you, Chair, and thank you for organising this meeting. My delegation appreciates the presentations from Mr. Adama Barrow, the President of Gambia, and the Minister for Finances, Mr. Amadou Sanneh. The National Development Plan presented today is a crucial element for moving forward in meeting objectives with a conviction for peace, sustaining peace and peace building. And we are firmly committed to this and continue to prioritise peace and governance in this regard. We have here a plan which clearly puts forward the priorities of the government of the Gambia in the areas of governance, energy, infrastructure, agriculture and social areas. We are pleased by the stress we saw on youth and the empowerment of women. We are also pleased that the Gambia is illustrating the importance of national ownership, accompanied by regional organisations in seeking dialogue and national reconciliation. We are awaiting the best of results from the international conference to be organised next month in Brussels. It is hopeful to see countries which were previously in such complex situations of political tension can manage to undertake peaceful transitions thanks to the efforts of the international and regional community. They are also taking specific steps towards the peace building. Just like our country, the Gambia has seen how international and regional efforts can make true progress in promoting sustainable peace with national ownership for this. Gambia will continue to contribute positively within the context of peace building with its constructive spirit. I thank you.
I thank you as well. Dear colleagues, it seems that we exhausted our list of speakers. I wish also to join others and thank His Excellency President Adama Barrow and Honourable Minister Amadou Sanneh and other ministers of the Gambia delegation for outlining a comprehensive government's response to the Gambia's sustaining peace and sustainable development challenges. I'm confident that the PBC can continue to provide its platform to enhance coherence and mobilize deeper commitment and partnership between the national stakeholders, the UN system, the regional and international partners in support of the peace-building and sustainable development priorities of the Gambia. If there are no other intervention, I would like to declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.